The world contains dozens of ancient structures that seem to defy time and logic. Some are hidden in jungles and deserts, others rise on mountaintops or rest underground, and each of them holds a secret that can change our understanding of the past of mankind. This is the second part of this collection, and this time we will mention previously untouched topics, buildings, around which many mysteries about their origin and not only have not yet been solved. Longyu Caves, China, hidden away in Zhejiang Province in southeastern China, is an underground complex that archaeologists call one of the greatest mysteries of antiquity. The Longyu Caves were discovered by accident in 1992 when farmers decided to drain a pond and discovered an underwater entrance to a huge hall with perfectly smooth walls. It was later discovered that there were more than 20 such caves. They are all connected by passages, have a regular shape, and are covered with strange patterns, parallel furrows running across the entire surface from the floor to the ceiling. This pattern is so uniform that it gives the impression of machine processing, although the age of the complex is estimated at least 2,000 years. The dimensions are astonishing. Some halls reach 30 meters in height and thousands of square meters of area. According to calculations, the builders had to move over 1 million cubic meters of stone. But the mystery is that no traces of tools, debris, or remains of civilization were found nearby. Moreover, not a single Chinese chronicler mentions such a grandiose construction, although China is known for its detailed historical tradition. There are various versions of the purpose of the caves. Some believe that they were secret warehouses or military shelters. Others believe that ritual relics could have been stored here, or ceremonies could have been held here. Some researchers see Longyu as a system associated with astronomical or geomantic calculations. There are even hypotheses that the complex was created by a vanished culture whose knowledge far exceeded the level of known civilizations. Today, the caves are open to tourists, and everyone who descends into their silence experiences a strange feeling of awe. Tall columns, smooth walls, and mysterious patterns on the stone create the impression that these are not ruins, but a message from the past. Some call Longyu an underground city, others gates to other worlds. But one thing is clear. Before us is a structure that completely goes beyond the boundaries of conventional history. The Longyu Caves remain a mystery that defies time and science, reminding us that humanity's past holds secrets that have yet to be revealed. Sigiriya, Sri Lanka. In the center of Sri Lanka stands a giant stone monolith known as Sigiriya, or Lion Rock. At its summit once stood a majestic palace surrounded by gardens, pools, and terraces. Today, Sigiriya is considered one of Asia's most amazing archaeological sites, but its true origins and purpose remain a mystery. According to chronicles in the 5th century A.D., King Kassapa chose this rock as a refuge and erected an impregnable fortress on its top. However, many details make it doubtful that the complex was created only as a residence for the ruler. Stone steps leading to a height of almost 200 meters end at giant lion paws carved into the rock. Presumably, there used to be a huge lion's head here, and the entrance to the palace was literally the throat of the beast. The frescoes of Sigiriya are a separate mystery. On the walls there are preserved images of heavenly maidens, apsaras, soaring in the clouds. Their style and elegance have no analogues in the art of that time. Some researchers see in them evidence of an ancient fertility cult. Others believe that these were symbolic images of heavenly patronesses. The water structures at the foot of the cliff are no less mysterious. Canals, pools, and fountains are still functioning, although they are 1,500 years old. The engineering of the complex is striking in its precision. The hydraulic system took into account the natural slope of the soil and allowed the pools to be filled even during the dry season. So what was it really? A palace, a temple, or an astronomical observatory? Some scholars believe that Sigiriya may have been a sacred site long before Kasap. The rock itself looks like a natural altar, and its summit is ideal for observing the sky. Perhaps the royal palace was just a late addition to the ancient cult center. Today, Sigiriya is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and attracts thousands of tourists every year. Climbing the steps, people feel that they are not just walking to ruins, but to a place where myth and history intersect. The stones, frescoes, and ruins remind us that Sigiriya was created not only for power and luxury, but also to keep a secret that goes back centuries. Underground cities of Cappadocia, Turkey. On the Cappadocia Plateau, among the bizarre volcanic landscapes and stone mushrooms, one of the most amazing architectural phenomena of antiquity is hidden, multi-level underground cities. The most famous of them, Derinkuyu, goes underground to a depth of more than 60 meters and consists of dozens of floors connected by tunnels, ventilation shafts, and hidden halls. These underground cities could shelter up to 20,000 people, along with livestock and food supplies. The ventilation system built in them is so efficient that even today it causes admiration among engineers. Narrow corridors and massive stone circular doors made it possible to quickly isolate levels, turning the cities into fortresses where the enemy was trapped. Historians have long argued about who created these underground labyrinths and when. Some attribute them to the times of the Hittites, others believe that they were carved out much later, during the times of Byzantium, when Christians were escaping here from invasions. But there are also bolder versions, claiming that the first tunnels could have been dug thousands of years before these events, and only then expanded and rebuilt. Why was it necessary to go underground to such a depth? Some scientists believe that the reason was constant wars and threats of raids. But there are suggestions that the underground cities served not only as shelters, but also as sanctuaries. Altars, crosses, and carved symbols indicating a religious purpose have been found in some halls. The most puzzling thing is the scale. Carving such vast spaces out of soft volcanic tuff required a colossal amount of labor and organization that we don't expect from ancient societies. In addition, archaeologists did not find much construction waste during their excavations. Where did the millions of tons of stone disappear to? This question remains unanswered. Today, tourists can only descend a few levels of Derinkuyu and other cities, but even this is enough to feel the cold air, the silence, and the sense of an ancient presence. The underground corridors give the impression of not just ruins, but a carefully designed complex in which every turn and every niche has its own meaning. The underground cities of Cappadocia are evidence that human history holds secrets that have yet to be explained. They remind us that sometimes the most important buildings are not built high, but go deep underground, hidden from our sight and from time. Nan Madol, Micronesia. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Pohnpei, lies a place that has long been called the Atlantis of the Pacific. Nan Madol is an ancient city built right on the water. Its ruins consist of more than 90 small islands connected by canals and bridges and look like a stone labyrinth that goes into the ocean surface. The main mystery of Nan Madol is the material and technology of construction. The walls of the structures are made of giant basalt blocks, each weighing from 5 to 50 tons. These blocks are laid in neat horizontal rows, forming massive platforms and walls up to 10 meters high. In some areas, the stones resemble giant logs, as if someone had deliberately shaped the basalt into cylinders. But the question arises, how could the inhabitants of a tiny island have mined, processed, and moved such blocks without metal tools and technology? Local legends claim that Nan Madol was built with the help of magic. According to legend, 2 wizard brothers arrived on the island and, using spells, raised huge stone blocks into the air to create a city for the rulers. This version seems fantastic, but even modern engineers admit that transporting and laying such blocks manually is almost impossible. Scientists believe that the construction of Nan Madol began around the 13th century and lasted for several centuries. It was the religious and political center of the Sodlur dynasty, which ruled the islands. There were temples, tombs, and palaces, and around them were canals along which the inhabitants moved by canoe. However, no one can explain why the rulers chose this particular place, so difficult to build such a grandiose complex. Archaeologists still find traces of burials, ritual objects, and ceramics in the ruins. All this indicates that Nan Madol was not only a capital, but also a sacred city. Some researchers believe that the canals symbolize the division of the world of the living and the world of spirits, and the islands themselves could have been a kind of map of the cosmos. But the mysteries are not limited to the construction. The disappearance of the city also raises questions. By the 15th century, the Sodlur dynasty had fallen, and Nan Madol was abandoned. Locals began to avoid it, considering it cursed. According to legend, anyone who dared to spend the night among the ruins died. Even in the 20th century, researchers recorded eyewitness accounts of strange lights and sounds emanating from abandoned temples. Comparisons of Nan Madol with Atlantis are not accidental. The city on the water, built from giant blocks, really does resemble Plato's legends about a sunken civilization. Some scientists even today put forward bold hypotheses that Nan Madol could be the last legacy of a much more ancient culture, traces of which disappeared in the ocean. Modern research using underwater technology has shown that some of the structures go deep underwater. This suggests that the ocean level has risen significantly in recent centuries, and perhaps most of Nan Madol is hidden under the waves. But full-scale excavations and study of these structures are not yet possible. Today, Nan Madol is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but remains one of the least studied archaeological sites on the planet. Tourists who have reached these places describe a strange feeling of silence and grandeur when standing among the basalt walls, with the ocean roaring around them. It seems that the city continues to live its secret life, hidden from human eyes. Nan Madol remains a challenge for science. The site proves that even in the most remote corners of the world, civilizations could have arisen whose knowledge and skills we cannot yet explain. Whether it was the capital of rulers, a religious center, or the legacy of a lost culture, we may never know. But that is precisely the power of its mystery. Nan Madol reminds us that the ocean holds more secrets than we are willing to imagine. In the sacred valley of the Incas, not far from Cusco, one of the most mysterious and impressive structures of South America is hidden, the fortress and temple complex of Ollantaytambo. This place not only amazes with its scale, but also poses questions to researchers that still have no clear answers. Ollantaytambo was an important political and religious center, as well as a fortress where the Incas fought the Spanish conquerors. But the most striking thing about this complex is the stonework. Giant blocks weighing several tens of tons are perfectly fitted together without the use of mortar. Their edges are so smooth that they resemble the work of modern machines, and the seams are so precise that it is impossible to insert even a knife blade between the stones. Particularly mysterious is the Temple of the Sun, part of the complex consisting of 6 enormous monoliths of purple andesite. Each block weighs more than 50 tons, and all of them were delivered from quarries located several kilometers from the fortress across the river and mountain passes. How exactly the Incas were able to transport and install these colossi is a question that remains unanswered. There are several hypotheses. The official version claims that the blocks were moved along stone roads and with the help of wooden rollers. But archaeologists point out that the weight of the stones is so great that such methods would hardly have been effective. In addition, there is not enough wood in the area to implement such projects. Other researchers suggest that the Incas used a system of ropes, levers, and inclined planes. But this version does not explain the perfect precision of the installation of the blocks. There are even bolder theories. Some believe that the Incas knew the secrets of special solutions or plants that allowed them to soften the stone, making it pliable like clay. This version sounds fantastic, but local legends mention it. The layout of Ollantaytambo is no less amazing. The city and fortress were built in strict accordance with the principles of sacred geometry. The terraces running along the mountain slopes not only served for agriculture, but also created a complex system of fortifications. At the same time, their shape and location, according to a number of scientists, could be connected with astronomical observations. Some researchers claim that Ollantaytambo was a kind of observatory where Inca priests studied the movement of the sun, moon, and stars. Ollantaytambo's history is also steeped in drama. It was here in 1536 that the military leader Manco Inca inflicted one of his few defeats on the Spanish, using an ingenious system of canals to flood the plain and hinder the advance of the cavalry. But despite this victory, the Inca resistance was soon broken. Today, Ollantaytambo is often called a living museum. On its streets, you can still meet descendants of the Incas living in houses built on ancient foundations. Stone walls, narrow alleys, and the sounds of streams flowing along the streets create the feeling that time has stood still here. Ollantaytambo remains a symbol of the mystery and grandeur of the Inca civilization. Its stone blocks and walls seem to defy modern understanding of technology. Was it a military outpost, a temple complex, or an astronomical center? Perhaps it was all of these, but in any case, what we see here is not just ruins, but a message from the past that we have not yet fully deciphered. Standing at the foot of the Temple of the Sun and looking at the perfectly aligned monoliths, it is impossible not to feel awe. It seems that the stones themselves preserve the memory of those who raised and installed them, and that they still radiate the power that the ancient builders possessed. Ollantaytambo is more than just an archaeological site. It is a living reminder that the past can be full of secrets that can change our understanding of the capabilities of ancient civilizations. Corvin Castle, Romania. In the heart of Transylvania, on a rocky cliff above the Zlasti River, rises the majestic Gothic Corvin Castle, also called Hunyadi or Castellul Corvin. Its gloomy walls, narrow loophole windows, and towers with sharp spires seem to have come straight from the pages of medieval chronicles. But behind the external grandeur lies a history filled with legends, secrets, and a mystical aura. The construction of the castle began in the 15th century by order of the military leader János Hunyadi, one of the most influential people in the Kingdom of Hungary. He conceived it as a fortress and residence, a symbol of power and strength. But over time, the castle acquired stories that made it not only an architectural monument, but also a place where people come to touch the mystery. The main legend is connected with the figure of Vlad Tepes, known as Dracula. It is believed that it was here that he spent several years in captivity. Although historians debate the veracity of this version, the idea that the legendary ruler who inspired the vampire languished behind these walls has given the castle a dark reputation. Tourists still seek out the dungeons where prisoners were supposedly tortured and the dark cells where inmates lost their minds. The story of the well located in the courtyard is no less mysterious. According to legend, it was dug by Turkish prisoners who worked for more than 10 years in the hope of gaining freedom. But when the water finally gushed from the depths, their promises were not kept. An inscription has been preserved on the wall of the well, the meaning of which remains a subject of debate. Some claim that it is a plea for justice, others that it is a curse placed on the castle and its owners. The architecture of the Corvins is striking in its grandeur. The bridge leading to the main gate is thrown over a deep moat, and massive towers rise above the rocks, like guards ready to protect the fortress from any enemy. Inside, there are halls with painted ceilings, stone staircases, and long corridors where every step echoes. The atmosphere of the castle is so strong that it seems as if the walls have absorbed all the events they have witnessed. For centuries, locals have told tales of ghosts that supposedly roam the halls. Some have heard footsteps in empty corridors, others have seen silhouettes in windows when the castle was empty. A woman in white who appears near the old towers is especially often mentioned. These stories have made Corvinov one of the most ghostly castles in Europe. Today, the castle is one of Romania's top tourist attractions. Not only history buffs come here, but also mystery hunters. In the evening, when the sun sets behind the mountains and the towers turn crimson, it is difficult to separate reality from legend. It seems that the past is coming to life, and echoes of forgotten voices can be heard among the stone walls. Corvinov is more than an architectural monument. It is a place where legends intertwine with history and myths become part of cultural heritage. It reminds us that medieval castles were not only fortresses, but also symbols of power, fear, and secret knowledge. Standing at the massive gate, you can't help but feel the breath of history. The Corvin Castle remains a symbol of Transylvania, its mystical glory and eternal craving for mystery. And perhaps that is why it still evokes awe in visitors. After all, some walls can hold more secrets than books are willing to reveal. Bhangar Fort, India. In the state of Rajasthan, amidst desolate hills and scorching winds, stand the ruins that many call the most haunted place in India. Bhangar Fort is an abandoned fortified city steeped in legends of witches, curses, and spirits. So strong is its reputation that the government has officially banned visitors from visiting the fort after dusk and before dawn. No local would dare to spend the night near these walls. The fort was built in the 17th century by ruler Bhagwan Das for his son Madho Singh. In its heyday, it was a thriving city with markets, temples, and palaces. But soon after its foundation, a curse seemed to hang over it, and it quickly fell into disrepair. Legends attribute this to the intervention of dark forces. The most famous story is about a sorcerer named Singhia. According to legend, he fell in love with the beautiful Princess Ratnavati, but she rejected him. Then the sorcerer tried to bewitch her by mixing a potion into the body oil she was going to buy at the market. But the princess, realizing the trick, poured oil on the stone, and the spell backfired on the sorcerer himself. Before his death, he allegedly cursed Bhangar, predicting that the city would be destroyed and no one would be able to live here in peace. Soon, the prediction came true. According to legend, the troops of a neighboring state attacked the city, the inhabitants were killed, and the temples and houses were abandoned. Since then, Bhangar has never been revived. Even today, locals believe that the spirits of the dead live within its walls and that any interference can lead to disaster. Archaeologists who explored the fort found evidence that the city had indeed been abandoned suddenly. Streets, temples, and palaces remained almost untouched, as if life had ended here in one day. But scientists cannot fully explain the reasons for the disappearance of the inhabitants. Some point to wars and political conflicts, others talk about famine or epidemics. However, in the popular consciousness, there is only one explanation: a curse. The fort itself is also interesting in its design. Its walls rise against the backdrop of hills, and inside there are dozens of temples, residences, and even a market that has preserved its stone shops. Despite the devastation, the architecture is striking. Arches, columns, and palace halls testify to the high level of skill of the builders. But it is the contrast between grandeur and abandonment that makes the place so ominous. Eyewitnesses report strange phenomena in Bhangar. Tourists have claimed to hear whispers, jingling bangles, and footsteps in empty corridors. Some have felt sudden gusts of cold air despite the heat. Some have claimed to see shadows moving among the ruins. These stories only add to the fort's mystical reputation. The Indian government has taken the legend seriously. At the gates of the fort, there is a sign from the Archaeological Survey of India warning that entry into Bhangar is strictly prohibited after sunset. It is a rare case of the state officially acknowledging the danger of a place, albeit for reasons it does not explain. Scientists, of course, try to find rational explanations. Some believe that the unusual sounds and sensations can be explained by acoustics and resonances in old walls. Others believe that the curse myths are a cultural legacy that has evolved into a collective belief over time. But many researchers admit that the atmosphere at Bhangar is indeed heavy, and even skeptics feel a strange tension within its walls. Bhangar Fort has become a popular destination for mystery lovers and tourists. It is called the Ghost City of India, and everyone who visits it experiences a mixture of awe and fear. During the day, the ruins seem picturesque, but as the sun sets, everything changes. The shadows lengthen, the wind picks up, and every sound begins to seem alien. Today, Bhangar remains a symbol that legends and fears can outlive the strongest walls. Its curse may be a myth, but such is the power of that myth that it continues to shape the fate of the city centuries later. Bhangar Fort reminds us that sometimes places become more than just stones and ruins. They become symbols of a people's fears, hopes, and memories. And as long as its walls stand in the hills of Rajasthan, it will remain an enigma, a place where the line between history and mysticism is finally erased. Masada Fortress, Israel. On top of an isolated cliff on the western shore of the Dead Sea stand the ruins of Masada, one of the most symbolic and tragic sites in Israel's history. Today, it is an archaeological site and a national symbol, but behind its stone walls lies a history that has been shrouded in legend and mystery for centuries. The fortress was built in the 1st century BC by King Herod the Great. It was an impregnable fortification with palaces, warehouses, water cisterns, and even baths. High, steep cliffs made Masada almost inaccessible to enemies. Here, in the middle of the desert, a real oasis fortress was created, capable of withstanding a long siege. But it was precisely this isolation that made Masada the scene of one of the most dramatic stories in antiquity. In 66 CE, the Great Jewish Revolt against the Roman Empire began. After the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE, a group of zealot rebels led by Eleazar ben Yair took refuge in Masada. They fortified the walls and prepared for a final stand. The number of defenders, including their families, reached almost 1,000 people. The Romans, seeking to finally suppress the rebellion, surrounded Masada with an army of several legions. Archaeologists still find remains of the camps and walls they built around the mountain. The siege lasted for months. The Romans built a huge earthen rampart and a siege tower to reach the walls of the fortress. This engineering work is amazing in itself. The structure, built in the desert, is still visible from afar. When it became clear that the walls would fall, the defenders made a decision that made Masada a legend. According to the historian Josephus, the fortress's inhabitants decided not to surrender. The night before the assault, they killed each other to avoid falling into enemy hands. The last person left was one man who committed suicide. The only survivors were women and children who hid in caves. Thus, about 900 people chose death over slavery. The event became a symbol of Jewish heroism and resistance, but it also raised many questions. Was there really a mass suicide? The only source is Josephus, and archaeological evidence provides conflicting evidence. Some researchers believe the story was exaggerated or even created for specific political purposes. Nevertheless, the archaeology of Masada holds many mysteries. The ruins of Herod's palace with mosaics and frescoes still amaze with their magnificence. Water cisterns carved into the rock show a high level of engineering skill. Traces of burnt rooms have also been preserved, which indicate the tragic end of the fortress. But questions about the real number of victims and how exactly it all happened remain unanswered. Local legends add an even more mystical aura to Masada. It is believed that the spirits of the zealots still guard the fortress, and that anyone who climbs the mountain senses their presence. Tourists and pilgrims often describe a feeling of extraordinary silence and tension as they stand among the ruins, as if the walls themselves bear witness to the tragic choice. Today, Masada is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of Israel's top tourist attractions. Thousands of people climb to the top every year to watch the sunrise over the Dead Sea. At that moment, the golden light illuminates the ruins, and it seems as if the past is coming alive, recalling events that took place 2,000 years ago. Masada is more than just an archaeological site. It is a symbol of strength and tragedy, a story of people choosing death for freedom. But it is also a mystery. What exactly happened that night when the Romans stormed the fortress? Was it a collective suicide or a brutal massacre? We are unlikely to know the answers, but it is this mystery that gives Masada its special power. The fortress stands as a reminder that history is always multi-layered. It weaves together facts, legends, and myths. And perhaps that is precisely its significance. Masada remains not only a symbol of the past, but also an eternal question about the price of freedom and the line between truth and myth. Borobudur Temple, Indonesia. In the heart of Java, amidst dense tropical jungle and volcanic peaks, stands the gigantic Buddhist temple of Borobudur. This is one of the most grandiose religious buildings on the planet, which can rightfully be called a stone mantra embodied in architecture. Its scale and symbolism are astounding, and the mysteries of its origin and purpose still excite the minds of scholars and mystics. The temple was built in the 8th to 9th centuries by the Sailendra dynasty, but no ancient chronicles have preserved any mention of how exactly it was erected or how long the construction took. This is amazing because more than 2 million stone blocks were used to create Borobudur, which were laid with incredible precision without the use of mortar. Some researchers suggest that the construction took several decades, but there is no exact data. The architecture of Borobudur is unique. It is a giant step pyramid 35 meters high and more than 100 meters long on each side. The temple consists of 9 tiers, symbolizing the steps of the Buddhist spiritual path from the world of desires to enlightenment. The 3 upper terraces are topped by a huge central stupa, surrounded by 72 smaller ones, each containing a stone statue of Buddha. The reliefs are particularly impressive. More than 2,500 scenes depicting myths, legends, and the teachings of Buddha are carved into the walls of the temple. The total length of the bas reliefs is almost 5 kilometers, making them the greatest stone book in the history of mankind. Among the scenes, you can see the birth of Siddhartha Gautama, his path to enlightenment, as well as allegories of karma and the wheel of reincarnation. But the mystery of Borobudur is not only in its scale. Its layout is based on the principles of sacred geometry and astronomical precision. The temple is oriented in strict accordance with the cardinal directions, and the arrangement of stupas and terraces reflects the cosmological model of the Buddhist universe. For priests and pilgrims, Borobudur was not just a temple, but a living mandala, along which a person made a pilgrimage, gradually rising from the lower levels to the highest state of spirit. There is also a mystical side. Some researchers are sure that the temple is connected with ancient astronomical observations. The location of stupas and symbols coincides with the position of certain constellations, and Borobudur itself can be considered as a giant calendar in which the cycles of the sun and moon are encrypted. There are versions that the temple served not only as a religious center, but also as an astronomical observatory. The disappearance of the temple from the island's cultural life remains no less mysterious. Already in the 14th century, it was abandoned and gradually hidden by jungle and volcanic ash. Why did the inhabitants of Java abandon such a majestic structure? Some believe that it is connected with the spread of Islam on the island. Others, that natural disasters forced people to leave the region. But the fact remains that the temple, created as a center of spiritual life, disappeared from memory for several centuries. In the 19th century, it was rediscovered by European explorers, but restoration began only in the 20th century. Even today, conservation work continues at Borobudur, as its stone blocks suffer from rain, erosion, and tourist traffic. Legends add even more mysticism to the temple. Locals say that at night, quiet voices can be heard among the stupas or strange lights can be seen. Some pilgrims claim that when climbing the terraces, they feel a special state, as if the walls themselves help them achieve inner enlightenment. Today, Borobudur is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is the largest Buddhist temple in the world. But despite the attention of tourists and scientists, it remains a mystery. How were people in the 8th century able to build such a grand structure without modern equipment? Why did they choose this particular place, located at the foot of volcanoes? And what role did the temple play in the lives of those who lived here more than 1,000 years ago? Borobudur is not just an archaeological site. It is a message in stone, a reflection of the spiritual quest and knowledge of ancient masters. It reminds us that architecture can be not only a home for gods or a place of prayer, but also a tool for a person's inner journey. And while its terraces reach into the sky and its stupas reflect the light of the rising sun, Borobudur continues to keep its secrets, revealing only a part of them to those who are ready to listen to the silence and see the depth in the stone. Humberstone, Chile. In the Atacama Desert, the driest in the world, amidst sun-baked land and endless salt flats, lies the ghost town of Humberstone. It was once a bustling industrial center, mining and processing the saltpeter that supplied the world's fertilizer and gunpowder. Today, its rusty structures, abandoned houses, and empty streets have become a symbol of oblivion, tragedy, and many legends that make Humberstone one of the most mystical places in South America. The city was founded in the late 19th century by British entrepreneur James Humbert, who gave it his name. During its heyday, it was home to thousands of workers and their families. Humberstone had schools, hospitals, a theater, and even its own swimming pool filled with imported water. Despite the harsh desert conditions, life was in full swing here. But along with prosperity came hardships. Work at the saltpeter factories was exhausting and dangerous. People lived in constant dust and heat, and social inequality became increasingly noticeable. A particularly dramatic chapter in history was the workers' strike of 1907, when thousands of people came out to demand better working conditions and higher wages. They marched to the port city of Iquique, hoping for negotiations, but the protest ended in bloody tragedy. The army opened fire on the unarmed crowd, killing hundreds. This event, known as the Iquique Massacre, forever wove a sense of pain and injustice into the history of Humberstone. By the mid-20th century, interest in saltpeter had fallen sharply due to the advent of synthetic fertilizers. The town began to empty out, and by the 1960s, it was completely abandoned. Since then, Humberstone has become a ghost town, whose rusty structures and ruined houses are reminiscent of its former grandeur and the tragic fates of its residents. But with history came legends. Locals and tourists tell stories of strange happenings in Humberstone. In the old school, where wooden desks and notebooks still stand, children's laughter and footsteps are often heard, although the building has been empty for decades. In the abandoned theater, some have seen silhouettes of people on stage, and others claim to have heard applause echoing in the silence of the night. One of the most eerie places is the local cemetery. Its wooden crosses are warped by time, and the graves are often half open due to the dry climate, in which bodies naturally mummify. Tourists have reported seeing figures between the graves, or feeling someone watching them. It is believed that the souls of the dead workers still wander among the ruins, reminding us of injustice and suffering. Scientists and paranormal researchers are also interested in Humberstone. It is called the most ghostly town in South America. Some point out that the desert atmosphere, silence, and devastation enhance the impressions and cause hallucinations in people. But even skeptics admit the energy of this place is heavy and oppressive, as if the past itself continues to live in the empty streets. In 2005, UNESCO added Humberstone and the neighboring town of Santa Laura to its World Heritage List. This made them more accessible to tourists, but also increased interest in the mystical side of these ruins. Today, not only historians come here, but also ghost hunters to spend the night among rusty workshops and dilapidated houses. Humberstone is more than just a ghost town. It is a symbol of an era when industrial thirst for progress coexisted with human tragedy. Its walls and empty classrooms preserve the memory of those who lived and worked here, who fought for justice, and who died in the struggle. Perhaps this is why legends about ghosts and mystical phenomena are so firmly rooted in the minds of people. This town has seen too much for its history to disappear without a trace. Standing among the rusting structures and listening to the wind blow through the deserted streets, you realize that Humberstone is more than just ruins. It is a reminder that civilizations may rise and fall, but their memories live on, sometimes in books and chronicles, and sometimes in whispers heard only by those who dare to spend a night among the stone, sand, and shadows of the past. Kailasanatha Temple, India. In western India, in the Ellora cave complex, one of the most incredible structures of antiquity is hidden, the Kailasanatha Temple, or simply Kailasa. This temple, dedicated to Shiva, was not built in the usual way. It was not made of stone blocks and was not erected in stages. It was completely carved out of a single rock from top to bottom, as if craftsmen had freed it from a stone mountain. To this day, architects and historians admit that even with modern technology, it would be incredibly difficult to repeat something like this. The Kailasa Temple is striking in its size. Its height is about 30 meters, its length is more than 50, and its width is 35. All this space, together with columns, statues, and ornaments, is carved in basalt rock, which is as hard as granite. To create such a complex, the builders had to remove at least 200,000 tons of stone, but no traces of this huge amount of debris have been found in the archaeological layers. Where the rock disappeared to is a mystery that researchers are struggling to solve. The construction technology remains a mystery. It is known that the temple was built in the 8th to 9th centuries by the Rashtrakuta dynasty. But how were the craftsmen able to carve such a complex structure with such geometric precision? Most researchers believe that iron tools and an incredible amount of labor were used. However, even if thousands of workers worked for decades, it is difficult to explain such precise lines, symmetry, and elegance of details. The main feature of Kailasa is not only its size, but also the level of artistic processing. The walls, columns, and vaults are covered with bas-reliefs depicting scenes from the Hindu epics Mahabharata and Ramayana. Here you can see battles of gods and demons, scenes of Rama's feet, processions of elephants, and dancing apsaras. Each figure is carved with such finesse that it seems alive. Particularly striking is the sculptural group depicting the myth of Shiva casting the Ganges down from the sky. The symbolism of the temple is also striking. Its architecture reproduces the mythological Mount Kailash, the abode of Shiva, which in Hinduism is considered the center of the universe. Thus, the Kailash temple is not only a place of worship, but also a stone model of the universe, in which each element reflects religious and cosmological significance. There are many versions of how exactly Kailasa was created. The official story speaks of dozens of years of continuous work by thousands of craftsmen. But some researchers are sure that such a result cannot be explained by human effort alone. There are hypotheses that the builders possessed a lost technology of stone processing, which allowed them to work with basalt with an ease inaccessible to us. Local legends are even bolder. According to them, the temple was erected in one night by divine forces to prove the greatness of Shiva. Of particular interest is the mystery of the missing traces. If hundreds of thousands of tons of rock were indeed removed, why have archaeologists not found traces of waste heaps nearby? Perhaps the rock was used to build other structures, but in that case there should have been at least traces of transportation. The absence of such evidence lends a mystical tone to the Kailasa story. The temple also has unique acoustics. When mantras or chanting are heard in its main hall, the walls reflect the sounds so that they are amplified and acquire a special resonance. For pilgrims, this becomes part of the mystical experience. It seems that the stones themselves respond to the prayer. Today, Kailasanath is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is considered the crown jewel of the Ellora Caves. But despite its fame, secrets remain. How was such precision achieved while working with hard rock? Why are there almost no references in local chronicles to the construction, which must have been colossal in its scale? And was the temple only a place of worship or also a repository of knowledge lost with the disappearance of ancient civilizations? For many visitors, the Kailasa Temple is more than just a monument. It is a portal to the past, where legends and facts merge. Standing among the columns and looking at the stone elephants that support the vaults, you feel like you're in a place where the line between the human and the divine is erased. Kailasanath is a challenge to our understanding of history. It reminds us that ancient builders may have possessed knowledge that seems impossible to us. And while we search for answers, the temple continues to hold its secrets, rising above the Ellora cliffs as a symbol of eternal mystery and spiritual power. Stone circles of Senegambia, Africa. In West Africa, in the territory of Senegal and Gambia, there are mysterious stone circles that archaeologists call one of the greatest megalithic complexes in the world. These structures are not as famous as Stonehenge or the Egyptian pyramids, but in terms of scale and mystery, they can compete with them. The stone circles of Senegambia consist of more than 1,000 monuments and have over 16,000 columns built in regular shapes. The age of the complex is estimated at between 1,000 and 2,000 years, but the exact dates remain a matter of debate. Scientists are certain of only one thing: they were created by peoples about whom we know very little. These builders have no written evidence, and the oral traditions of local tribes do not shed light on the mystery. Who exactly erected the megaliths and why remains a mystery. Each column weighs between a few hundred kilograms and several tons and is up to 3 meters high. They are made of laterite, a hard rock that was quarried and then transported tens of kilometers. This requires a colossal effort and a well-organized society, but no evidence of developed states in the region at that time has yet been found. The purpose of the stone circles is the subject of heated debate. One theory is that they were burial complexes. Archaeologists have indeed found burials with remains of pottery, jewelry, and weapons under the columns. Perhaps the circles served as memorials for nobles or warriors. But if so, why build such grandiose structures for each burial? The scale exceeds simple ritual needs. Some researchers believe that the circles served an astronomical function. Their location could correspond to the movement of the sun, moon, and stars. This version is supported by the fact that some complexes are built with amazing geometric precision. This makes them similar to stone calendars that allowed ancient priests to track the changing seasons and conduct rituals at key moments of the year. But there are also more mystical hypotheses. Some local legends claim that the columns were not erected by people, but by spirits of the earth. Legends say that the stones have power and that it is dangerous to approach them at night. Many villagers still avoid the megaliths, considering them sacred. Scientists note that the mystery of Senegambia is in many ways similar to the mystery of Stonehenge. In both cases, we are dealing with grandiose structures that require knowledge and effort that were not expected from ancient peoples. But unlike Europe, the African circles have been studied much less well. International expeditions began only at the end of the 20th century, and so far only a small part of the complexes have been subjected to serious excavations. The scale is impressive. The stone circles stretch over an area of more than 30,000 square kilometers. This is a whole world of megaliths, each of which holds its own secret. Some circles are perfectly symmetrical, others are oval or even spiral. All this indicates that the creators possess not only engineering, but also mathematical knowledge. It also remains a mystery why the tradition of building megaliths suddenly disappeared. Archaeological layers show that at some point the construction was stopped and the complexes themselves were abandoned. Perhaps the religious system changed or new peoples arrived who did not continue the tradition. But the reason for this disappearance remains unclear. Today, the Senegambia stone circles are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but despite their historical value, they remain little known outside Africa. Tourists rarely get here, and local residents treat the megaliths with respect and caution, avoiding disturbing their silence once again. Standing among these stone columns, you feel like you have entered a world where time has stopped. The silence of the savanna, the red earth, and the rows of stones create a sense of ancient presence. It seems that these circles were created not only for people, but also for gods or spirits to indicate their power over the earth and sky. The Senegambia stone circles are a mystery that still awaits resolution. Were they calendars, memorials, or sacred symbols? Or do they conceal knowledge that we have lost and that could change our understanding of the ancient world? While the answers remain unknown, the circles continue to stand as sentinels of time, preserving the memory of a civilization whose name we will no longer know. Himeji Castle, Japan. In the central part of Japan, in Hyogo Prefecture, stands Himeji Castle, a majestic fortress that the Japanese call the White Heron Castle for its graceful silhouette and snow-white walls. From the outside, it seems airy and light, like a soaring bird, but behind this beauty lies a powerful defensive structure, the history of which is full of secrets, myths, and legends about ghosts. Construction of the castle began in the 14th century and lasted for over 200 years until Himeji took on its current appearance in the early 17th century. Its architecture is considered the pinnacle of Japanese castle architecture. A complex system of towers, gates, walls, and hidden corridors creates a labyrinth capable of confusing any enemy. Legends say that even experienced samurai who entered for the first time could not find the exit, and the defenders could rain down a barrage of arrows and stones on them. However, architectural tricks are only part of the story. Himeji Castle is surrounded by mystical legends. One of the most famous is connected with Oka-san, a ghost woman. Legend has it that she was a servant who was unjustly accused of theft and sentenced to death. Before her execution, she cursed the castle and its inhabitants, and since then, her spirit has allegedly wandered the corridors. Locals claim to have heard her footsteps and seen a white silhouette of a woman in a kimono on the towers on moonlit nights. There is another story, that of Oka-san and the well. According to legend, a woman named Oka-san, who refused to give her heart to a samurai, was thrown into a well inside the castle. Since then, her ghost is said to appear near the water, moaning and whispering. The well is still shown to tourists, and many claim to have felt a strange cold there, even on hot summer days. Himeji Castle is also unique in that it miraculously escaped destruction. Unlike many other Japanese fortresses, it was not burned during wars and was not damaged in World War II. Moreover, when a bomb fell on Himeji during an air raid, it did not explode, and the castle remained intact. This event gave rise to the belief that the fortress was protected by a higher power. The structure of the castle itself remains a mystery. Its numerous passages and secret staircases are so intricate that many researchers see in them not only military logic, but also a sacred meaning. It is believed that the layout of Himeji is connected with the principles of feng shui and that it was designed to harmonize the energy of the earth and sky. Local legends also speak of spells that protected the castle. Supposedly, scrolls with magical formulas were immured in its walls, and even living creatures were sacrificed to protect the fortress. Although archaeologists have not found direct evidence, such beliefs existed in many cultures, and Japan was no exception. Today, Himeji is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most visited castles in the country. But for many tourists, it is more than just a historical monument. Standing among the snow-white walls and looking at the graceful roofs with curved corners, they feel that the castle holds not only the history of the samurai, but also the shadows of their spirits. This feeling is especially strong in the evening when the sun sets behind the mountains and the castle seems to come alive, painted in golden light. Himeji continues to amaze with its duality. On the one hand, it is a symbol of harmony, beauty, and grace, a white heron that hovers over the city. On the other, it is a fortress that holds stories of blood, betrayal, and curses. And it is this combination that makes it unique. Himeji is not just a castle, but a reflection of all Japanese history, where beauty and cruelty have always existed side by side. The castle reminds us that architecture can be more than stone and wood. It can hold the memories, fears, and hopes of generations. And as long as the towers of Himeji rise above the city, they will remain a symbol not only of Japanese culture, but also of an eternal mystery. What is stronger, human hands or the spirits that guard these walls? Dungeons of Odessa, Ukraine. Under the streets of Odessa, a city on the Black Sea, there is a network of underground labyrinths, considered one of the largest in the world. These catacombs stretch for more than 2,500 kilometers. In length, they are several times longer than the famous Parisian catacombs. But unlike Europe, Odessa's undergrounds were not designed in advance. They emerged as a byproduct of human activity and over time turned into a mysterious world full of legends, secrets, and tragic stories. The catacombs originate in the 18th to 19th centuries, when shell rock was actively mined in Odessa, limestone from which houses and palaces of the young city were built. The quarries deepened, connected with each other, and gradually kilometers of voids formed underground. People began to use these passages for storing goods, hiding places, and secret movements. Thus, a whole underground city arose, existing in parallel with ordinary life above. Already in the 19th century, the catacombs were overgrown with the first legends. It was said that in their depths one could meet lost people whose souls turned into ghosts, wandering forever in silence. Some claimed to hear strange voices and footsteps as they descended into the tunnels. This may have been due to echoes and sound illusions, but it was these stories that cemented the dungeon's reputation as a dangerous and mystical place. During World War II, the catacombs became a real refuge. Underground fighters, partisans, and residents trying to escape the occupation hid here. The entrances were carefully camouflaged, and entire bases with weapons and food were created in the depths. Today, tourists are shown some of these shelters, which have preserved beds, household items, and even inscriptions on the walls. The atmosphere of these places is heavy, as if the earth itself preserves the memory of fear and resistance. But the Odessa catacombs are also known for their tragedies. Due to the enormous length and complexity of the tunnels, it is easy to get lost here. Over the past decades, there have been many cases where people who decided to explore the dungeons without guides disappeared without a trace. One of the most famous stories involves a girl whose body was found months after she got lost during a New Year's celebration. Since then, her image has often been mentioned in urban legends as the ghost of the catacombs. Scientists and researchers have repeatedly tried to create a complete map of the dungeons, but the task has proven nearly impossible. New passages continue to be found to this day, and many old ones are blocked by collapses. Some are sure that in the depths of the catacombs there are still undiscovered halls that could have been used by smugglers or even secret societies of the 19th century. The mystical reputation of the dungeons only grows stronger with time. Speleologists and tourists tell of strange sensations, sudden cold, heavy breathing, unreasonable fear. Some claim to have seen shadows and heard voices. Skeptics explain this by oxygen starvation and the psychological pressure of darkness. But for those who have descended into the catacombs, these explanations do not cancel out the real feeling that they were not alone. Today, some of the catacombs are open for tours. Tourists are taken along safe routes, shown ancient quarries, underground bases, and legendary ghost halls. But most of the dungeons remain closed and unsuitable for visiting. Their depths continue to hold secrets that may never be revealed. The Odessa catacombs are not just underground passages. They are the history of the city, embodied in stone, the history of people who worked here, hid, died, and left traces of their presence. This is a place where legends intertwine with facts, and the memory of the past becomes part of a mystical aura. Standing at the entrance to one of the tunnels and feeling the cold air coming out of the depths, you understand. Here, time seems to have stopped. And perhaps this is why the catacombs continue to excite the imagination. They remind us that there is another world underground, dark, mysterious, and eternal. Tiwanaku and the Gate of the Sun, Bolivia. High in the Andes, not far from the shores of sacred Lake Titicaca, lie the ruins of Tiwanaku, one of the most enigmatic centers of ancient civilization in South America. For archaeologists and historians, this place remains the key to understanding the continent's past, but it also raises questions that still have no clear answers. Here rise giant stone platforms, the remains of temples, and the most famous structure, the Gate of the Sun, a monolith covered with mysterious symbols. According to research, Tiwanaku existed long before the heyday of the Inca Empire. The city's age is estimated at least 1,500 years, but many archaeologists are confident that its foundations could have been laid even earlier, more than 3,000 years ago. It is hard to believe that in such harsh conditions, at an altitude of almost 4,000 meters above sea level, a civilization could arise and flourish. Nevertheless, it was here that one of the greatest cultural centers of pre-Columbian America was created. The most impressive part of Tiwanaku is its stone structures. Massive blocks of andesite and sandstone weighing tens of tons are laid with amazing precision. It is impossible to insert even a knife blade between them. Some blocks have complex notches and geometric shapes, as if intended for joining with other elements. Archaeologists are still debating how ancient builders were able to process the stone with such precision without iron tools. The Gate of the Sun is the symbol of Tiwanaku, and perhaps one of the greatest mysteries of the Andes. It is a monolithic slab weighing about 10 tons and 3 meters high, decorated with complex reliefs. In the center is a mysterious deity with rays around his head, called the Sun God or Staff God. Around him are figures of winged creatures, some of which resemble humans and others animals. Scientists suggest that the bas-reliefs may be related to the calendar system or creation myths. But the meaning of the Gate of the Sun remains unsolved. Some researchers believe that it served as an entrance to a temple complex, others that it is an astronomical instrument for observing the sun and stars. There is a hypothesis that the reliefs on the gate represent a diagram of an ancient calendar reflecting the cycles of the moon and sun. More daring versions claim that the symbols encode knowledge received from the gods who came from heaven. No less mysterious is why Tiwanaku was abandoned. By the 9th century, the city had fallen into disrepair and its inhabitants had disappeared, leaving behind ruins. The reasons are not entirely clear. Perhaps climate change, drought, or social conflict played a role. But Andean mythology has a different explanation. The gods abandoned the people, and the city lost its sacred significance. Archaeologists find not only temples and statues here, but also evidence of advanced engineering. A system of canals and terraces for agriculture allowed crops to be grown in high-altitude conditions. This proves that the Tiwanaku civilization had knowledge that was far ahead of its time. Local legends further enhance the mystical aura. Residents of nearby villages say that at night, lights can be seen among the ruins, and sounds reminiscent of singing can be heard. It is believed that the spirits of ancient priests still guard this place. The belief in the sacredness of Tiwanaku is so strong that many Aymara Indians perceive it as the point where heaven and earth meet. Modern researchers use laser scanning and drones to study the city's layout. It turns out that the buildings and squares are arranged in amazing geometric harmony, which could reflect the cosmic ideas of the ancient inhabitants. The orientation of the Gate of the Sun also supports this version. The sun's rays pass through them on certain days of the year, which suggests a connection with astronomical observations. Today, Tiwanaku and the Gate of the Sun are a UNESCO World Heritage Site and are Bolivia's most important tourist attraction. But for those who come here, it is more than just a historical monument. Standing in front of the monolith covered in ancient symbols, people feel the breath of the past. It seems that the stones contain a message that humanity has yet to decipher. Tiwanaku remains a symbol of the mystery and power of ancient civilizations. Its ruins suggest that the history of South America is richer and more complex than is commonly believed. The Gate of the Sun is not only an artifact, but also a challenge to modernity, a reminder that lost knowledge may be closer to the truth than we think. And as the sun rises over the Andes and its rays illuminate the ancient monolith, Tiwanaku lives on. It remains a place where the past and myth merge into one, and where every stone holds a secret waiting to be revealed. The 15 mysterious structures of the second series show that human history is full of blank spots. From Longyu and Sigiriya to Tiwanaku and the Gate of the Sun, each place holds a secret that eludes science. These stones remind us that the past is not finished. It continues to ask questions that we are still looking for answers to.